Now, a ship carrying 12,000 tons of corn from Ukraine has now docked in Turkey. The vessel left Chornomorsk 3 days ago. Both Russia and Ukraine have agreed to resume grain exports under an agreement brokered by the United Nations and Turkey. The UN was warning that the delay in exports could lead to famine and higher food prices in many parts of the world. Well, for the latest on the conflict in Ukraine, we can now speak to Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson, who joins us from London. Great to see you, John. So the Russians and the Ukrainians trading accusations over the shelling of that nuclear power plant. Are we able to confirm what's happening there?
Hey Charles, good to see you. Well, we can only rely on reports coming out of the region, and you know the Russians give one story, the Ukrainians give another, so we have to work it out ourselves as to who is actually telling the truth. As you say, this nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe, 10th biggest in the world, an extremely important complex, supplying 4 million homes with electricity in the area of South Ukraine. The Russians blaming the Ukrainians for shelling parts of the plant. The Ukrainians are doing the same. My understanding, Charles, is that there are only 2 reactors actually working. There are 6 at the plant. And when it was built with reinforced steel and concrete and made to withstand the crash of a civilian airliner on the reactors themselves. So you can see that it would take a lot of rocketry, okay, to cause a serious problem as far as the reactors are concerned. The difficulty here is is the area where the spent fuel is kept, and this, if this sustained a severe attack from rockets, could release potentially nuclear waste into the atmosphere. Now, both sides know that this could affect thousands of people, and the Russians know that it could drift because of the wind, the way the wind blows into southern Russia. So. Look, both sides know what the seriousness is of what's going on, and you might be saying, well, you know, why are they firing rockets at this nuclear plant or in the vicinity of it, especially, which is under the control of the Russians, but as you said in the intro, the Ukrainian scientists and workers are actually running it. To my mind, they're the real heroes here. So I'm sure they're fully aware of the risks. I'm very surprised that the Russians have agreed for the IAEA inspectors to come, the nuclear inspectors from Vienna, because it's in a war zone and it's under, in effect, Russian protection. So that's a big move by the Russians if indeed these inspectors are allowed in. Charles.
Well, absolutely. But of course, any kind of incident, John, would be compounded by a lack of disaster response, wouldn't it? I mean, assuming something happens before the inspectors actually get there. Because, I mean, fire trucks may not be able to make it onto the site because the area is currently blockaded, isn't it?
That's right. And the other issue, which I didn't mention before, is that routine maintenance of this plant has all but ended. And of course, these nuclear plants need essential maintenance all the time. And yes, access to any detonation, if it happened, will be extremely limited. And because it's in a war zone and there are restrictions on movements, and look, it doesn't really bear thinking about. And of course, thoughts go back to Chernobyl in 1986. Chernobyl now in Ukraine, but part of the Soviet Union back then. And their reactor exploded, sending millions of cubic feet of nuclear waste into the atmosphere. Left at least 4,000 people dead, according to the UN, and people are still dying today because of from illnesses, including cancer, following the Chernobyl incident. So, you know, if you don't think too hard, if you think too hard about it, it's a really scary situation, and especially for the people who live in the Zaporizhzia area. I'm sure they are having some sleepless nights at the moment. Charles.
And John, as a battle tactic, I mean, using a nuclear plant as a shield, I mean, that's not particularly surprising given the recent history of the Russians on the battlefield. But I mean, how effective is that? I mean, how do you respond if you were the Ukrainians in a situation where the danger to civilian life is so high?
Well, this is what Zelensky is saying, that the Russians are using this as a cover for military installations, including artillery. That's not to say that the Ukrainians don't do the same thing to a much lesser extent when they store military hardware in civilian areas. And indeed, the Ukrainians have been recently criticized by Amnesty International for doing that. But all one can say is that the common sense must prevail here, that the Ukrainians surely mustn't do extreme damage to this nuclear power plant just to get their hands on or to destroy Russian artillery and other military equipment. It's a very delicate situation.
Well, to be honest, John, I mean, I would be hard-pressed to understand why the Russians would attack a facility they already occupy. So the best hope, really, speaking generally, is that the world will have to trust the Ukrainians on whose territory this power plant is to understand the science and the threat of it.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, one has to hope that common sense prevails. And in this kind of wartime scenario, sometimes common sense goes out of the window, but surely both sides know that, a nuclear disaster, a detonation at this plant will be just catastrophic, not only for southern Ukraine, but also southern Russia, including, for example, the seized area of Crimea. So it is a very, very delicate situation. And as I say, one can only hope that common sense prevails between both sides.
Well, John, I certainly hope they're listening to your very considered analysis there. John Cookson is Arise chief correspondent, and he was talking to me from London.